Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehakol nהיה bidvarei. Hi.
Amen.
Amen.
Oh, l'chaim v'racha. Why is this not up over here? What's the cause? We've got some. No, I didn't share. Not sharing, but why is this not over here? Why is? Mhm. Give me a moment, folks. Thank God. We always got a challenge.
Not a problem, anybody. We're about to fix this. Just a jiffy. Duplicate these spells.
Yeah, but what do? Oh,
There we go. Good.
Yeah.
Yes.
We are. Look at that. Okay. Magic. Okay. First of all, a good jump to. Today is Yud Dalet Kislev. Today is the 14th day of Kislev. 96 years ago, our dear Rebbe and Rebbitzin wed in Warsaw in 1928. And from all accounts that I've read, there were thousands of people that came. And it's the day that the Rebbe said that this day is what has bound me to you and you to me. Because, of course, being the son-in-law of the previous Rebbe gave him then the, shall we say, the opportunity, or I don't know, opportunity is the wrong word, but the possibility of him becoming the Rebbe after the previous Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, the Frierdiker Rebbe, passed away in 1950. So it's a very special day. So l'chaim. I was by the Rebbe's 50th wedding anniversary. Made a Fabringen. In 1979, I was a yeshiva student. And I remember it well. Okay. So since special day, special talk and discussion, Sikh of the Rebbe. How would you call a bad Jew? Someone who eats a ham sandwich on Yom Kippur? And a good Jew? Someone who wishes he could eat a ham sandwich on Yom Kippur? How do you define the good and the bad? What does it mean to be a good Jew? Now, of course, ultimately only God is the one who can make the judgment. So it's not about us judging another, but it is about us maybe having an understanding of this. So we're going to engage, as we have of recent times, on a Rashi in the Torah portion. And from that Rashi, we'll engage in trying to understand the way Rashi thinks, right? How Rashi understands the verse in the Torah, and the Rebbe will, sort of guide us into his mind, which is an interesting idea, how to be able to think like someone else thinks. To think the way you think and I think, well, I think the way I think because that's the way I think, right? But to be able to think the way someone else thinks, right? And to understand their way of thinking, what That's amazing, first of all, that you could do that. And secondly, what would that lead to ultimately? Being able to do such a thing. What would it lead to? Huh?
To think like what others are thinking, like.
Right. What would that lead to? Yeah, yes.
Compassion.
Empathy. It will lead you to empathy. Very good. Who said that?
Me, Elise.
Elise, very good. Excellent. It'll lead you to empathy because if you can understand the way another person thinks, then that will give you the capacity to have empathy for that individual because that person doesn't think the way you think. So this is just a side benefit that I'm, mentioning over here, that we are able to, through this, appreciate the way Rashi thinks and the way the Rebbe is teaching us the way Rashi thinks. Because there's many different commentators, and we'll give you different ways on how to think on how Rashi thinks. All right. So let us proceed. But before that, one of the couple of principles, since we're principled people. I hope I got the right one here.
No, Robert.
No, not the right one.
No, not the right screen.
Oh, not the right speech,
Yes.
the right partial.
Okay, down. Not the right one, Robert. Could you unshare again? Stop share and share again, please. The bottom right.
That's what I did, no?
No. This is one. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, put that on the side. Okay. Whatever you say, boss. Okay. So some of the Rashi rules. Rashi only answers questions that when they arise. He does not preview questions that will arise at a later point, right? We know that principle. Rashi answers questions the first time they arise. He does not delay answering them until they arise the second time. And third, Rashi does not use extra words. And if any words in his commentary appear to be extra, we misunderstood them. Okay. So the story of this week's Torah portion is, of course, story of Joseph, Yosef HaTzadik, 17-year-old boy who is his father's favorite. And he's not appreciated by the brothers, the 6 brothers that are Leah's children. And of course, when Yosef comes, the brothers, they want to kill him. And separate what that means and how could they do that and so on. They didn't do it just out of hatred. They did it based on Jewish law, but that's a different subject. They threw him into a pit, and Yehuda, who was the kind of the leader of the lot, said to them, no. You can't do that. You have to, you can't kill him. Sell him off as a slave. And we'll show to our father that he was slain by a wild animal. And so they did. When they came, told their father, his father was very saddened, would not be comforted. And as a result, the brothers were upset with Yehuda. Why did you give us this advice? If you would have told us to return him to our father, we would have done that. They wanted to kill him. Well, but he was the leader of the pack, and they were upset with him. And as a result, he was disgraced. He left the family home and established a homestead elsewhere. He marries, has 3 sons, and when they grow older, he marries off to Tamar. First son dies childless. The second son performs a Levirate marriage, dies also. And then there's the third son to give to Tamar. And Yehuda said, well, yeah, let's wait till the boy grows up. Right? He actually didn't want to give the third son. So then what happens is Yehuda's wife passes away. And this is where we pick up the story. Okay? This week's parsha. And the days passed, and Yehuda's wife, the daughter of Shua, passed away. Yehuda was consoled and ascended with his friend Chira, the Adamolite, to Timnah to oversee his sheep sharers. Tamar was informed, behold, your father-in-law has ascended to Timnah to share his sheep. Right? That's where the story unfolds. Tamar meets Yehuda on the road. There's a whole story about this, which we're not going to go off on this because this is in itself a whole teachings of what happened, right? They had relations. She bears twins. They grow up to be exceedingly righteous people, for the twins, and they are the forebearers of King David, of Mashiach, ultimately. Okay? That's the storyline, but there's, again, a lot there, and we're not going to stop on any of that. We're going to now focus in on an obscure point. The location of where this took place was Timnah, right, where he's going. Right, he is a city which Yehuda travels. He ascends to Timnah, right, creating the impression that Timnah is uphill. But was it? Well, what does Rashi say? That's our interest over here. Pay attention very closely to Rashi. Ascended to Timnah, he quotes from the verse, right? Elul Timnah, so that's what the verse says. But of Samson it is written, and Samson descended to Timnah. Oh, so in the book of Judges, it says Samson descended to Timnah. So we have a bit of a problem, right? What's the problem? It says ascended in our verse. So it seems to be a contradiction. The city was located on the mountain slope. One could ascend to it from the bottom or descend it from the top. Okay? Pretty simple what Rashi is saying, correct? What is your problem with Rashi?
Bigger problem. We don't have one.
You didn't have a problem? Think of the principles that we spoke about before, and you should have major problems. Major problems.
Okay, well, when you ascend, you're clearly coming from the bottom, and when you descend, it's clearly from the top.
Yeah, you got your directions good. You're good to go. We could send you to Mars. You're so good with directions. If you want to make the first Chabad there. But
Is this Timnah as in the Timnah that I know in Israel, the Timnah mines?
no. 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 So the first question is, where is the question come about where Timnah exactly is? Where would the issue come up? Here? When you read the verse, is there an issue here where Timnah is? No, because it says he ascended to Timnah. When will the issue come up? When you read in the book of Judges and it says that Samson descended. Oh, okay. So then why are you referring to it here then? Why are you dealing with this question here? It only becomes a question in the book of Judges where it says the opposite. And therefore you have to answer it's on a slope. But here it's not an issue. So Rashi, what are you telling us over here? Does that clear the question? Yeah? Clear? Everybody else? Thumbs up? Can I have some thumbs up? No thumbs? Big thumb? Little thumb? Some thumb? Thank you. Okay. So that's the first question. Second question is, well, let's go back for a moment. Look at the verse over here. Verse number 12, it says that Yehuda and ascended with his friend. Where did he ascend? To Timnah. So in verse 12, it tells us that he ascended, right? So why doesn't he answer? If it's a question of a contradiction in the book of Judges, why doesn't he answer the question in verse 12? Why does he wait to verse 13? Got it? Make sense, the question? Thumbs up? I need more thumbs. Andrew?
Got it. Got it.
Wait, okay. Good. Excellent. All right, okay. Dan, you're with me? Are you playing music right now? Or you're with me? Thumbs up there? All right. That's our second question. Our third question is, why does Rashi say, but of Samson it is written, why do you have to mention Samson?
This-
You could have just said that in Judges it says that Samson descended to Timnah. You have to tell me about Samson. Remember, every word is precise. The fact that he has to say it's about something about Samson, even the verse says it, right? You didn't even in the verse, you don't even need to say, you could just descend it to Timnah, because that would be the contradiction is in those words, not in anything else. So you don't need to know anything about Samson, that it was Samson that was the one that descended, because that's not the point. The point is that to get to Timnah, you have to descend, which from there we deduce that ascending or descending means I have to be in the middle of the slope, not at the top, not at the bottom, right? Is that clear? The third question? Do I have a thumbs up here? Sorry, you're going to get a sore thumb. Maybe you're going to get two sore thumbs. Oh my gosh. Another question is, the Talmud actually discusses this and says, gives an answer, which Rashi doesn't take Rashi takes one of the answers, three answers the Talmud says. But one of the things that it says there is that going up and going down is allegorical, meaning going up ascended in his commitment, in his life, and as opposed to going down, descending in your commitment, right? So it's allegorical. Why doesn't Rashi just learn it? It's allegorical, right? Okay, those are the few questions that we got. Okay, what we're going to see is that, of course, we're not understanding this appropriately. Our assumption is that Rashi is bringing a contradiction from the book of Judges. He's not bringing a contradiction from the book of Judges, obviously, because if that was the case, he would have to wait to the book of Judges to have the contradiction. So he's only bringing that as a evidence, right? He has another problem. That's what he comes to address. Now, what do you think his problem might be? Anybody? Now that you're starting to think like Rashi, not like your own thoughts, your own ideas, your own, rationale. What do you think Rashi is bothered by?
How all of a sudden Samson became relevant.
Yeah.
No. Whoa. What's Samson got to do with anything? That's Rashi. No, that's not my question. What's Rashi's problem in the verse? That's part of his answer. But that's not what my question was. We dealt with Rashi already. Now to understand Rashi, we need to get into the head. What's bothering Rashi in the verse? Go back to the verse for a second, right? Tama was informed that her father-in-law had ascended to Timnah, right? So what could be Rashi's issue over here? Very simple. What do we need to know that he ascended to Timnah? He went to Timnah. What he ascended? What do I have to know he ascended? Why is the Torah telling me that? It's not telling me, so I should be able to take out my compass and, as Elise was asking, oh, is that the Timnah that I know? No, it's not the Timnah that you know. Right? It's not so you can play Jewish geography. Oh, you're from St. Louis. Oh, I got an aunt in St. Louis. Maybe you know her. Jewish geography, right?
Why
That's
do we do that? We all do that. It's so bizarre.
okay. I was doing that as a joke, and don't go run with it now. We do it because we're Jewish. That's why. Because we're all connected. Because we're connected. So therefore, my aunt in St. Louis, obviously, you know her, Elise. Obviously. We're all one happy. I mean, we're all at least one family, and for the most part, happy, right? So Rashi's bothered. What gives? Why are you telling me? Like, to say where it is one thing, okay? But why do I need to know you're ascending there? And this and the question is exasperated by the fact, right? And he arose and he went to a place, and they came to the place. You know who that's talking about? Huh? No. He rose and went to the place, and they came to the place. I'm speaking about Avraham taking his son Yitzchak, and where does he take him? On top of a mountain, right? To bring him as an offering. And what does it say? He came to a place. Does it say he ascended to a place? No, right? But it doesn't say that, right? And seemingly, if anywhere that's relevant is there, but it doesn't tell us. So then the question becomes, why does the Torah tell us that here? Why does it tell us that going to Timnah, you're ascending, you're climbing up to Timnah?
Is it that they are spiritually ascending?
Well, that was our question. Rashi didn't say that. Oh, whoa. But that was one of our questions on Rashi. Rashi doesn't say, right? That would the Gemara answers that. The Talmud answers that as one of the answers to the verse. But Rashi, we're learning Rashi, folks. Get out of your head. Stop thinking your ideas. We're thinking in Rashi, right? So we're understanding what's bothering Rashi. Rashi is bothered by the fact that the verse says that he ascended. Why does the Torah have to tell me that? It doesn't even tell me that when it came to Abraham taking Isaac on the mountain, right? So obviously then mentioning climbing is not the Torah's usual way, right?
Is the problem with the rose too? Is there something with he arose?
He arose means he got up.
Oh, well, why didn't
He
he
got
say
up.
Nechlachol? Why
No,
didn't
he
he
got
say
up
to
and-
go?
Huh?
Why didn't they use the word like to go? He went. Why
Well,
is
it means like he arose in the morning, early in the morning,
Oh.
sat on his own donkey, and
okay.
so
That's
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Okay.
it's about him. It's not about where he was going. It's not about the geographical place, right? It's about him.
Right. Seems like we're doing geography. Last week was geography, like,
Yes, and we're continuing.
yes.
Okay. So then our question is also on the first verse, in verse number 12, right? And let whoever needs to come in, let him in. Right? In verse number 12, it says there that he ascended, right? So why does it say there? And why doesn't Rashi say anything there? Because the first time that it says that he ascended is actually allegorical. Right? The whole story is introduced with Yehuda going down. And it was at that time that Yehuda stepped down from among his brothers. What does it mean he stepped down? Rashi says it's a demotion. Rashi says Yehuda's brothers demoted him from his high position when they saw their father's distress. They said, you advised us to sell him. Had you advised us to return him, we would have obeyed you. Right? So he went down. The whole following story about him is his going down. What is it? Gets married. He has three boys. The marriage of the boys to Tamar, right? Their son's passing. All that is in a demoted state. When does the process of being reinstated begin? In passage number 12, when he says he goes up, ascending to Timnah. Why is he ascending? He is ascending spiritually in verse number 12. Got it? How so? Again, leaving out the whole story to explain the story, but with the relations that he has with Tamar and the two children that are born that are righteous, right? All that part actually leads him to be reinstated by his brothers. Okay? So he does ascend in verse number 12, right? And that kind of makes sense because if you look at verse number 12, who's speaking in verse 12? In the day's passage, Yehuda's wife saw the daughter of Shua passed away. Yehuda was consoled and ascended with his friend Chira, the Adamite, to Timnah to oversee his sheep shearers. Who's speaking there? God. So God knows that this is the beginning of his ascent. So therefore, it says in this verse that he is ascending to Timnah, right? At this point. In other words, his demotion, everything that happened, now he's going back up and eventually will come back to be the leader of the clan, of the family. Right. Well, first it wasn't such a good Muslim, right? He didn't go there. He went there as a demotion, right? However, verse 13 cannot apply that it was a allegorical, meaning a spiritual ascent. Why? Tamar was informed by who? Not by God, by a friend. A friend told her. When the friend says that he ascended to Timnah, is that allegorical? Of course not. She can't say that. She doesn't know that. The verse 12 can tell you that because that's God speaking in the Torah, telling us the narrative that he ascended spiritually after being demoted. And now Tamar is being informed by a friend that Yehuda is on his journey to Timnah. And all that she could be telling him is direction, right? He's going up, climbing up the mountain to Timnah, right? This causes Rashi to wonder why the Torah felt it was necessary to indicate that Timnah was on the mountain. Is that clear? Go ahead.
This Rashi we're discussing is on 12.
It's on 13.
Oh, it's okay, good. I thought it was on
13.
12. I'm like, why did you say it on 12? It should be on 13. Okay.
Well, it says he ascended here And
Yeah,
it
the
says
Rashi's
here,
on-
ascended here on 13
Okay.
also, it says ascended, right?
Yeah, the Rashi's on the 13.
Yeah, it's on the 13.
Okay.
Yeah. Here, ascended to Timnah. That's from verse 13.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we good so far? So in verse 13, it was Tamar's friend who told her that Yehuda had ascended. This must be meant he physically ascended to Timnah. Yeah? Very good.
All good level.
Okay. So answer number one, Rashi introduces a passage a student had not yet read, not to raise a question about it, but to answer the question about this passage. He used it to prove that Timnah was on a slope, which is why Tamar's friend mentioned Yehuda was climbing, so she would know his location, right? This is what's going on over here, right? So verse 12 is God speaking that this is the beginning of the ascent of Yehuda. He's coming back up, and eventually through this story, he will be reinstated, right? Verse 13 is Tamar's friend telling that Yehuda is about to journey, and you could head him off on the side of the road, and that would then create the bond, the union that they had that would lead to the two children that would be the twins would be born, and so on, right? So in verse 13, when her friend is telling her, the friend has to tell her exactly where he's headed to, so she knows where to meet up with him, right? The Yehud is climbing, right? With this, then we can understand that Timnah sat on the slope of the mountain. Why? Because either you could, it's at the middle of the mountain, why? And you're going up, meaning it's possible that you can come down the mountain, as we see by Shimshon, by Samson, and the fact that you can come down to Timnah, and you're going, and he's going up, so he's coming from below and not from on top. That's the direction she's giving, and therefore it's in the middle of the slope, right? And therefore you have bringing from the book of Judges is only to prove that it was in the middle of the slope, right?
Interesting.
Because ascending might mean ascending all the way to the top of the mountain, right? So Rashi says, no, the ascending here means to the middle of the mountain. And how do we know that? Because in the book of Judges. So now we know the location of Timnah, and we understand why Tamar's friend had to mention the climbing and why the Torah included it. Because Tamar had to be able to anticipate his path in order to meet him on the way, right?
Yeah.
And this is why Rashi introduces this verse here, even though the book of Judges is not something we're dealing with, not as a question, but as an answer to our question, right? And this also answers why he has to wait to verse 13, because only verse 13, it becomes a question. Because in verse 12, it's God speaking. God speaking, oh, so it's allegorical. In verse 13, it's Tamar's friend that's speaking and giving her heads up about Yehuda and his travel plans, where he's headed. But we have one question still to answer. Why do we have to mention Samson, Shimshon? We just mentioned the verse. It says that Timnah, you can descend to Timnah, which means it's obviously not at the top of the mountain. It is in the mid part of the mountain. Why do we have to mention Shimshon? What compels us to say that? So in ancient days, they built on top of the mountain for what purpose?
Mizbeach,
Huh?
altar.
No. Protection, security. Greater security on top of the mountain. You won't be right. Everything back in the day was about, about war, conquering, right? That's what life was about. I mean, non-Jewish life, at least. So that's a primary consideration back in ancient times, right? And therefore you would be, because it's difficult to build on top of a mountain or any part of the mountain, right? There's a lot of infrastructure to create that is very, it's much more expensive even today to if you want a home on the top of the mountain or on the side of the mountain, mudslides and so on and so forth, it is a very great challenge, right? So a great challenge, right? So now when we bring from a proof from Samson, what's the proof from him? Just like verse 12 is an allegory, maybe by him it's an allegory, and it means he went down. He failed. He had his failing there in Timnah. Right? What's the proof? So this is why Rashi brings down that by Shimshon, it says, because it is said many times in the book of Judges there that concerning Shimshon, the Torah says, and speaking in present tense, that he descended, he descended, he descended, he descended. We know Torah would not speak ill about another person and to emphasize their failings, more than necessary. Mentioning it once is sufficient. Like by Yehuda, we said he went down in stature from his brothers because his brothers counted on him as to be the leader, and they felt that he misguided them. So he went down. Only says one time. It doesn't repeat over and over, which, by the way, important when you are dealing with anybody in your life that did something wrong, to repeat over and over. Inappropriate. Said once. The fact that it's repeated over and over, then it means it can't be an allegory. It must be a physical place that he went down. Right? That's why his name is mentioned. Because if you would mention just the verse itself, you might think it's, you don't know that it's in reference to Shimshon and that it's mentioned many times there necessarily. And therefore it's because it's of a person. It wouldn't be that, often you will speak ill about that individual. So it must be that it is geographically that he went down. Now, still, why would there be a town, village, a city in the middle of the mountain? You don't have the great protection on being on top of the mountain, right? You have the challenges of building, on the side of the mountain, which is a great challenge. Why would you be there? So the Rebbe explains in the Sikha that there was a town beyond it and a town below it. And sometimes in between, if you had the town, they had the best of both worlds when it came to doing commerce. Because those who are below don't want to go up all the way to the top. Those who are on the top don't want to go down, but to go midpoint, that you will have a town, a village, or whatever it is, that will gain from both populations. And therefore, there were times that you would have a town on the side of the mountain. And so it is in the case of Timnah. Okay, so that answers all of our questions that we have in understanding Rashi. But as everything in Rashi, we have the precision of thinking the way Rashi's thinking, right? And the way the Rebbe teaches us to think the way he's thinking. But then we have, of course, the wine of Rashi. There's a deeper message here that Rashi is teaching us. That's the idea of climbing a mountain. Well, King David says it in Tehillim, Mi yalad b'har Hashem mi yakum b'mkom kodsher. Who will climb God's mountain, and who will arise in his holy place? So the Jewish mystics speak about spiritual climbing of a mountain. As brought down about Moshe Rabbeinu, about Moses, from the teaching of our sages, it would appear that Moses never climbed a physical mountain. Rabbi Yossi said the divine presence never descended below, nor did Moshe ascend to the heavens. I suggest that when the Torah says Moshe climbed the mountain or ascended to God, does not refer to an actual climb. The intention is that Moshe received divine permission to ascend to an even higher spiritual level. So similarly, King David implores us that we need to climb God's mountain. What does that mean? It means we have to strive for spiritual growth, to ascend from one rung to the next rung, right? In other words, to truly be a servant of Hashem, meaning is not you're walking with God, you're climbing the mountain. Why the metaphor of climbing a mountain? Because it's a challenge. Walking is relatively pretty simple. Going up the mountain is relatively a struggle. Well, life is that struggle, and that we should recognize that this is what it means to truly serve Hashem, is in that struggle of moving forward in life, right? So forward again, forward. The metaphor for forward is just cross the split the sea that splits. That's a metaphor, that's true, but that's not the metaphor here. Here it's about going up the mountain, which is the struggle that's engaged with that and the growth that you are, spiritually growing. Now, there's more to the metaphors that Rebbe brings out in the Sikha, is that what happens when you're in the middle of the mountain? Well, the Rebbe says, it is known that when climbing and ascending a mountain, you can't stop midway and stand for a time on the slope. If we do, it's almost inevitable that we will stumble and fall downward. Rather, we must continue our climb without pause. Climbing God's mountain is similar to the sense, in this sense that one must always be climbing to ensure they don't fall. We must never be content with the spiritual level that we've achieved thus far. Contentment with our current level and failure to ascend from one sacred level to the next inevitably leads to descent. So let's summarize over here. Climbing a mountain means rising from one level to the next. Once you start climbing, you can't stop, because if you stop, it means you will falter by definition, right? You're sitting there in the middle of the mountain, right? Can't. You got to move forward, right? So Timnah was built on a slope, and as we mentioned, it was built in the middle. Why? To tell us never to stop climbing, because it was built on top of the mountain. So the metaphor would be is to reach the peak. Do we reach the peak? No, why not? Why not? Okay, won't argue with you, but why explain? Well, God's infinite and we're finite, so there is no peak. If it's about your feeling good about yourself, I reached the peak, I reached the pinnacle. I've got so many fans of mine. We've got so many people, let's see how many people we got over here. Okay, I didn't reach the pinnacle. Only 15. Far from. Far from, I guess. Right? Far from the pinnacle. Okay. So, but the idea, if it was on top of the mountain, so it'd be about reaching to the top. No. Know that you're always in the middle. First of all, means that there's always more to go to, right? Secondly, it also means not only there's greater heights, but you know what happens when you feel you're at the bottom of the mountain? What happens? It's a daunting task. And you wonder, should I start in my struggle to serve God, or should I just, give in? So the natural inclination is going to be to give in. You're at the bottom of the mountain. Like, also, when you look down at the bottom of the mountain, what is, there's no one below you. Oh, that's really a good reason to give up. There's no one lower than you. Now, not that you should be comparing yourself to others, but this is, of course, the animal soul that's going to talk to you and tell you, I'm at the bottom of the mountain. I'm obviously ain't going anywhere too fast. And to go up this mountain, forget it. Too much. I'm not Sir Edmund Hillary, Sir Edmund Hillary, that I'm going to be the one who's going to conquer Mount Everest, right? As he failed the first time in 1953. But it's not about achieving and getting there, because there's no there to get. This is not Mount Everest. You can feel good about yourself, right? This is always in the middle of the mountain. First of all, know that you've grown. You've gone somewhere. You're ahead. Now, it's not so much about being ahead of others, even though you might be also ahead of others. By the very fact that you engage in serving God, that means you're ahead of 99.9% of the world's population. Right? And you yourself are ahead by the very fact that you engaged in climbing God's mountain, period. Furthermore, now that you're in the middle of the mountain, right? So the fact that you are engaged, that itself gives you the impetus to feel that, okay, you're already there. You're already you're not there. There's no there to get to, but you already made so much movement. I can't stop, because that means what? Failure. That's the end. You got to move forward. Hence, the Rebbe, when he had his 70th birthday, and people said, time to kind of relax a little, take things a little more easily and not so, don't climb so fast the mountain. You could go take a smaller steps, or maybe just relax a bit on the mountain. No, you can't relax, because if you do that, you will falter. You will indeed falter. So this is ultimately, we can't stop. We cannot stop. And so with this, we can define what a good Jew is. What's a good Jew? So you can have a Jew who's very observant, fulfills all the mitzvahs, and is on the ladder way up here. You can have another Jew who's just starting out in observance and is way down here. But this Jew, their prayers are getting kind of, getting a little weak, and, they're not so engaged in their prayers. They're kind of either staying put, or actually even, God forbid, descending somewhat from their position, right, on the ladder, on the mountain. While this person might be just, starting to engage in and only saying the Shema in their prayers, nothing more. right? Putting on tefillin and, and even that, but they're moving up. Who's a good Jew? The one who's moving up the ladder, not the one who is stagnant or, God forbid, even worse, moving down the ladder. So who could judge that? Only God Almighty,
True judge.
right? Only God can judge, because do I know if you are going up or down the ladder? I might observe certain things in actions. That's true. But do I know what's going inside of you? No. So God sees your actions. He knows what's going inside of you. So he's the only true judge. So I cannot judge another person whether they're going up or down, because maybe their struggles that they're dealing with, right, are much greater challenges that keeps that person from, maybe they're inching up very gradually. But maybe I'm not, I'm stagnant, or God forbid, even worse. And sometimes in ourselves, we can't see that. We're not so privy to it. We're not so self-aware that we might recognize that we may be stagnant or going down. So we need to climb the ladder. We need to go up the mountain. That's what Yehuda did, even though it sounds counterintuitive, the whole storyline of what happened with Tamar, but yet two righteous, twins that are born, that are progenitors of Mashiach, the King David, it comes from, right? Is an amazing thing. It's actually what Rashi says about
The
left one.
Yeah.
All right,
Right.
yes. So Rashi says on the birth of Peretz, one of the twins, says, "Why did you preach the breach? This child would be the greatest of all breachers. He would be the progenitor of Mashiach, of whom it is written, and the breacher arose from before them." What is Mashiach? Someone who will breach the walls of exile. Someone who redeems the world by climbing and breaching all, right, being the ultimate record setter of climbing the walls of exile, right? How do you get there? How do you become that? How do we live with that idea? So there's a beautiful story told of the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, when he was a young boy, maybe, I don't know if he was 8 years old or something like that, I'm not certain. And he was playing in the courtyard, and his grandfather, the Alter Rebbe, author of the Tanya, right, was watching outside through the window, watching him and the children playing. And there was something leaning against the building, some sort of ladder or something, that whatever. And the kids, each one of the kids climbed up, and at some point, they came back down to the ground. The Tzemach Tzedek, little Menachem Mendel, it came his turn, he climbed, and he went straight to the top. So his grandfather rather, called him in and says, "Why were you able to get to the top while your friends were not? What happened? What did you do differently?" He says, "Oh, Zaidi, when my friends were climbing the ladder, they looked down to see how far they'd gone up, and that scared them, and therefore they came down the ladder. But when I went up the ladder, I only looked to see how far I need to go." And of course, he became the third Rebbe, Tzemach Tzedek. So that's the lesson of the mountain, right? To succeed in the mountain is just to see how far you need to go. To succeed in life is to see how far you need to go, and whatever it is that you are engaged in doing, whatever mitzvah it is, whatever challenge it is, whatever it is in life that's thrown your way, or that you take upon yourself, just look to see how far you need to go and go for it. right?
Mhm.
And you need to go for it, whatever it is. Our tendency is we've accomplished a little and we kind of look down and ooh, this place in life is a bit, a bit scary. It's daunting. The task is too great. You feel the height, that you might fall. Don't see any failure. Just look forward to where you need to get to. I say this to myself. I say this to you if you're listening. I say to myself that I need to listen because that's so crucial in leading one's life to truly serve Hashem and to be successful in it. We all climb the mountain together to bring the final redemption. Chaim, any questions?
Chaim.
Hi.
Chaim, any questions, comments, thoughts?
Mir sein and good, Rabbi.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's see what's doing online. Any questions online? Oops. Wrong place. This is what I wanted. Invite some people there. All right. Amazing. Okay, folks. Good to Shavua Tov.
Shavuot
Thank you.
Tov.